Hello, hi. I hope you don't mind me presenting from my bed today. I had a really late night last night, and I just woke up, but not because I was working, because I actually hosted an event with the Architecture Foundation last night. We hosted a midnight swimming event in the Thames, and I'll show you the invitation in a moment. But yeah, I just wanted to say that since the beginning of this project, I've been living by cycles of the moon and tidal cycles. So, these 9 to 5 days, they kind of clash with my new way of living. But the story goes a bit like this. I'll show you the invitation. The foreshore of opportunities, midnight swimming. Night and day, they filter through from Kemble to the sea, swirling along layers of history. Ordered by the moon, they rise in cycles, defying bedtimes and rush hour squabbles. Through foggy eyes, agitated by the wind, they look up at buildings distorted by the waves. More than able to find its way around the bends of London in the dark, we adorn its surface with lights. Politely, it does not mind, but do not be fooled, its chilling currents are not so kind. They live quietly, and unlike the city, it does not sleep. In the silence of the night, it releases soothing vibrations that seep in through the concrete and into your dreams. Joy was raised by the river. She's a Londoner born and bred. But on this night of May 2025, she locked her front door, and for the first time, she was going to meet the river face to face. Ben struck 12 times, and the full moon was visible above their heads. She looked around the crowd and spotted her friends. Her towel in one arm, her guitar over the other. She waved and her eyes sparkled. She tread carefully over the rubble. Joy noticed that the tide was very low that night. Small screens along the boardwalk allowed people to change, but most did not mind as bodies were no longer shamed in 2025. Plus, the night sky wrapped around their bodies like thin veils of modesty. Mesh lockers lined the walls so that humans could secure their possessions when swimming. Slow forms of life were already enjoying the foreshore. Algae and barnacles covered the nooks and crannies around the pool. The gabion wall of the foreshore finds formed the structure of a dipping pond. Steps led them to the body of water. Birds perched on the bridge and observed the crowd. After a moment of joy, the river tapped them on the shoulder and announced its slow return. Delicately, Joy and her friends picked up their belongings and left no trace behind them. This was one of the conditions they had agreed to before entering the water. Joy sat on the river's wall and hummed a song as the water submerged the pool she had just enjoyed. This midnight swim would have never been possible without the Thames 21, the Tideway Super Sewer, and the GLA, and the commoning of the foreshore. See, the majority of the land was previously owned by the Port of London Authority and the Crown Estate. For obvious reasons of safety, preserving archaeological finds, and protecting the environment, they were reluctant to share the land at first. The commoning of the foreshore was made possible thanks to the GLA's funding for self-organizing community projects, plus the project responded to many challenges addressed by the London Plan. The diversity of people and backgrounds supporting the project meant that all the concerns were managed in an alternative way. This approach was more makeshift, less corporate, less human-centric than other proposals. The next few pages had more into the event, including a site map, some conditions to respect before the event. But now I want to show you how we came to prepare this event. It all started with cartography of a colander. We are so used to seeing colanders on a daily basis, but rarely do we think of them as a source of industrial and domestic waste. See, colanders were once used to remove particles from liquids, whereas nowadays we use colanders to remove water from elements. Nonetheless, this subtle difference is a great way of illustrating our detachment to water in cities. After understanding how and where stainless steel is made, I focused my attention on how our domestic use relates to the wider city infrastructures, by which I mean water treatment plants, taps, sinks, pipes, gardens, gutters, the sewers, and finally, the river overflow outlets. The restrictions on movement and public space during COVID led me to the southern foreshore of Battersea Bridge. I noticed how many objects embodied obsessions of dominating water. Disrupting the human-centric relationship with the river is something my proposal seeks to address. It is through a series of performative acts that I collected situated knowledge. The submerged structure, in particular, was insightful. Inspired by my placement Reclaim Public Space, I attempted to form an in-situ prototype to create a shallow pool using foreshore rubble. Plus, for me, this was a cheeky way of probing illegality around mudlarking permits, as you are not allowed to dig or remove anything without a permit, but nothing is said about stacking them. In my future-facing scenario, I allude to this being a way forward to build the pool structure using gabions and foreshore fines. Interested in body politics, I hope that the act of swimming and nudity in urban context would provoke social change through normalizing bodies. Finally, closer observations of the water allowed me to better understand its movement. The never-ending cycle of tides, something we pay no attention to, but slowly, cycle after cycle, the river takes its revenge on man-made objects that obstruct its way. Now, with more context, shall we return to the foreshore of opportunity proposal. As you can see in this section, the proposal shows how we can occupy the foreshore at low tide. The proposal aims to provide democratic, accessible, safe, free public space in the city, and to restore a healthy and respectful relationship with water in cities. The proposal also suggests new physical spaces. These could provide facilities relating to swimming, or could become an ecological center, or even a river parliament. As you can see, the Tideway Super Sewer is a colossal new piece of infrastructure and is to be completed in 2025. Networks such as Thames 25, the Thames Festival, the Canal and River Trust are key in making this plausible utopia a reality, as they have the most knowledge regarding the river. The Midnight Swim seeks to encourage non-normative behaviors and values and promote physical and mental health. From commerce to industry to tourism, the river has a rich historic context and architectural heritage. My proposal seeks to rethink our relationship with non-human and nature. I wonder, how is this reflected in the built environment? Perhaps my proposal would be a new river typology that leads us into an era of climate care. The Port of London Authority and the Crown Estate are the main owners of the foreshore, and private residential developments often own parts of the boardwalk along the river. Managing risk and negotiating land use will be challenging, but not impossible, as there are precedents to build upon. For example, the Baddies in Switzerland, the organization Pool is Cool in Belgium, and finally, Studio Octopi, that are also proposing a Thames swimming pool. However, I disagree with their approach. My major project proposal, as a continuation from Unit 1, explored the topics of youth, citizenship, new modes of governance, countercultures, and pleasure. It asks, can we save the city from becoming dull? Returning to my primary focus of countering our detachment to water, my proposal seeks to revitalize cycles of care between human and non-human in London, as well as provide new forms of public space. As mentioned before, I did one placement as part of the think tank Reclaim Public Space, and the other, which was a reflection on my personal artistic practice. My placements have provided me with new knowledge and methodologies that I intend to bring forward in the proposal. For example, finding creative ways of working within a complex network of urban regenerators, the importance of building on past work, and for me, this started by looking at the achievements of the Reclaim the Beach parties in London, redefining and reclaiming public space, constructing situations that or create objects or installations as a mode of research, And finally, activating youth citizenship and learning from our urban context through situated knowledge that reminds us of the exploding school.
By Colin Ward.
Because, as mentioned in the story, I hope that the foreshores of opportunity will enable the new generation of young Londoners to be raised by the river. Ta-da! The end.
Thank you so much. I don't have a question. I really enjoyed it. So I have to sit with it for a moment. And is this the Thames in the background behind you, the blue?
Yeah, so this is a map of Paris, but I've kind of drawn one of the bends of the Thames, and you've got my colander and my swimming suit. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
I totally believe this when you said, oh, I just got up and I've just been swimming and organized this event for the Architecture Foundation. I was like, she did what? I was like, what?
Yeah, sorry, no invite.
I mean, I totally believed it.